Hey, come see with the makeup nurse. Come and take a seat with the makeup nurse. Trust me, it's the makeup nurse. Beautiful things with the makeup nurse. It's the makeup nurse. Yeah, it's the makeup nurse.
I'm back. Welcome back to my channel. The struggle is real with Jamie, the makeup nurse. Today is Wow Me Wednesday. It's also Sports Day, Bra Day USA, Liquor Day, Department Store Day, Dictionary Day, Bosses Day, Fossil Day, Support Your Local Chamber of Commerce Day, and Hagfish Day. All right, if you want to join the Pajami Club, hit that subscribe button, sit back, get comfy, and let's get started. And today we are going to talk a little bit about American Greed. And it could be the next episode of American Greed of that TV show. All right, let's start with Steward Healthcare. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And this may be a long one, so you might need some coffee or something. So Steward Healthcare is a large private for-profit system that is located, the headquarters is in Dallas, Texas. And they operate in, that's just the U.S. They also have hospitals in Colombia, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, am I saying that right? And Malta. So they are international as well. So back to the beginning. So in 2006, somewhere around 2006, Caritas Christi Healthcare was struggling and needed a CEO. And so, they needed a CEO, and so they had Dr. Ralph De La Torre be their CEO. And in the first year that he became the CEO, he turned from a loss of $20 million in 2008 to an income of $31 million in 2009, even amid the aftermath of the recent financial crisis. So, let's go to when Steward began. November of 2010, Cerberus Capital Management, through a newly formed company called the Steward Healthcare, acquires 6 Massachusetts hospitals from nonprofit Caritas Christi Healthcare in a leveraged buyout. And it was valued at $895 million. And then they talk about some other stuff. And then in May of 2011, Steward acquires Neshoba Valley and Merrimack Valley Hospital. And then in September of 2011, Steward acquires Quincy Medical Center and Morton Hospital, Massachusetts. And then Steward sells in April of 2012 13 medical office buildings to Healthcare Trust of America, an Arizona-based real estate investment trust. So anyway, they started acquiring a little bit more hospitals in between 10 and now we get down to 2017. Well, let's go back a little bit further. September of 2016, Steward and the trust, Medical Properties Trust, execute a $1.2 billion real estate acquisition deal for 9 of its Massachusetts hospitals and an additional $50 million equity investment in Steward, and commits to providing $1 billion in future Steward hospital acquisitions. And in November of 2016, Steward acquires Central Massachusetts Independent Physician Association in a leveraged buyout for an undisclosed amount. Then we move down to May of 2017. And a $304 million transaction in which 99% is paid by the Medical Properties Trust, Steward acquires 8 hospitals from Community Health Systems, marking the beginning of its expansion outside of Massachusetts. So in 2010 is when they had these hospitals in Massachusetts, and they wanted to venture out of the state. And a few times it failed, but eventually they were able to expand. And it's the key date, these key dates, May 17, 2017, they were able to acquire the 8 hospitals from Community Health Systems. So now they're up to like 16 hospitals. In September, now I started with IASIS Healthcare January of 2017. So a few months later, in around May, after they bought these 8 hospitals from Community Health Systems, they announced that we were going to be bought out by Steward Healthcare. So in September of 2017, they finalized the deal, and we become, as of, I think it was October 1st, 2017, we became Steward Healthcare. And we were based in Tennessee, and they were based out of Massachusetts. And then they eventually moved their headquarters to Dallas, Texas. And now they had like 36 hospitals at that time, but then they immediately sold off some of their hospitals and to other places and stuff like that. So in November of 2017, Steward sues Massachusetts state officials to avoid financial disclosures after it has racked it up at least $300,000 in fines for violating state regulations. Let's go back a little bit to 2011. So in 2011, there was a conversation led to a formal proposition for Cerebus to purchase Curitas and convert the system to for-profit. So that's when they converted everything to for-profit. The state attorney general at the time, which is A.G. Coakley, approved the deal with 4 stipulations requiring that Cerebus pay off Curitas' debt of approximately $275 million and assume liability of all the pensions valued at $200 million. Invest $400 million in capital expenditures and maintain majority ownership and not close or sell any hospitals for 3 to 5 years. And not take on debt for the purpose of dividends. So, however, Steward was reported to continue to lose money, and multiple attempts to expand outside of the Massachusetts had failed at this point. In September of 2011, the deal required, among other commitments, that both facilities stay open for at least 10 years. And this was from A.G. Oakley again, of Morton Hospital and Quincy Medical Center in both of Massachusetts. But despite the agreement to keep Quincy Medical Center open, Steward announced in November of 2014, so that's not 10 years, that the hospital would close by the end of the year. The next month, Steward and the state reached a deal to keep the hospital's ED open until at least the end of 2015. And it ultimately closed November 2020. So that so at least they stayed open a little bit longer in that regard. In 2015 ended a milestone for Steward as they saw their first ever profitable year, attributed to a significant drop in expenses. It also marked the end of the Attorney General's 5-year monitoring period, because they're monitoring them, allowing Steward to become more flexible with spending, use of debt, and facility operations. Maybe that's where this all went wrong. Maybe that's the root cause of this whole situation. In 2018, amid allegations of collusion between Vitals Global Healthcare of Malta, this is the Malta hospitals, and I remember them saying that they acquired these, because I was there in 2017 when they purchased us, and I left Steward and when the pandemic hit, so like May, March. Well, I was furloughed for a couple months. My official date was June 4th, 2020, when I officially was let go from the organization. And government officials' lack of progress in rehabilitation of the hospitals, so Steward, and accusations that the Vital Global Healthcare, or VGH, was siphoning money out of the country, parties agreed to a deal that would see Steward purchase VGH, or Vital Global Healthcare, for just, and it has it like a C, it must be like their Malta is like signed for dollars, and then 1. So I'm like, is that $1? While the Maltese government would pay VGH $50 million with the C, so I'm assuming that's dollars, well, their dollars, to accept the deal. The transfer of concession to Stewart did not state the public's concerns and triggered the organization of a medical workers' strike by the Medical Association of Malta. Stewart's presence remained unpopular until 2023, when Maltese courts annulled the 2018 deal amid continued allegations of fraud and lack of progress in hospital renovations and construction, ultimately returning control of hospitals to the government in 2024, I think it was. May 6th of 2024, Stewart ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on all the U.S., well, it says U.S. hospitals, and all the U.S. hospitals were up for sale. And there's a list of in Wikipedia, if you really want to look at all the hospitals. If you go to Wikipedia and see like all the acquisitions, sellouts, all the hospitals, the mergers, closures, and all that stuff, that they give you a detailed list on all the when they were sold. But a lot of these a lot of the deals fell through for a variety of reasons. Some weren't disclosed. Some, the Utah hospitals, I remember that fell through because the Federal Trade Commission stepped in because didn't want HCA, Hospital Care Corporation of America, to purchase them because they had a big presence, and because of a monopoly, is my understanding, is why they put a kibosh to that. But now Common Spirit Health has bought those hospitals. But I'm assuming with all the debt and the reputation, if I was a hospital organization, I don't know if I would want to buy into the reputation, even though you're putting your reputation on it now versus theirs. But still, I mean, it's going to take a lot for people to trust that hospital again. And with some of these closures that they had to close, it's a disservice to the area. I mean, where are these people going to go? And in these articles, it talks about like how it's really affecting the communities, because now they don't have a hospital to go to that's in a shorter distance. Now they have to go to all these other further hospital that's further away, and it's a real disservice to our patients. So as they're filing bankruptcy, Maltese investigators announced that they would be recommending charges against 34 individuals associated with the Vitals Global Healthcare, Stewart, and Swiss firm Acutur, including Stewart's CEO, Ralph De La Torre. And the charges included criminal conspiracy, trading in influence, misappropriation of public funds, fraud, money laundering, and bribery of local officials. The Office of the Attorney General of Malta confirmed that the 34 individuals would face charges as recommended by investigators. As of the latest I have read, he has not been convicted yet. I don't know if I say yet or if it's still in trial. I'm not sure 100% on that, but he is being accused of these things. The charges stem from allegations that Stewart and VGH conspired with Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, his Chief of Staff Keith Schembri, and Minister of Tourism Conrad Mizzi, who were already charged in order to secure the government contract and attain political influence in later renegotiations of the contract with the Maltese government. VGH and Stewart were alleged to have bribed officials via a slush fund of $1 million, which I'm assuming is their $1 million, laundered through Acutur, a Swiss consulting firm. So, And then Stewart, Muscat, Schembri, and Mizzi denied the accusations, of course. Stewart publicly claims that it hired Acutur as business management consultant, and Steward President Armin Ernst in a 2019 internal email described the agreement as intended to support political and government activities and interactions. Investigators said that after leaving office, Muscat and Mizzi became paid consultants of Ecutor, with Chambry also appearing to benefit indirectly. So, I mean, this is like shady. And I thought something was kind of shady when I worked there, but obviously I was like way down here and they're up here. So and I'm not a CFO, so I don't know anything. I just know like what I hear from the hospitals and the rumors and, you know, stuff like that. But two Ecutor directors later resigned from the company, reporting that they became aware of an arrangement apparently concealed by company executives in which the three government officials were to receive $18 million, multi-dollars, as partners in the hospital deal. The Times of Malta reported in May of 2024, and this is exactly when they're filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, concluded that the chances Muscat, Chambry, and Mizzi happened to all then go on to independently form relationships with Ecutor is considered so negligible that the possibility is excluded, and that they further observed that the arrangement in any way had been a donation towards genuine political purposes connected to Malta. It would not have been necessary to send the payments offshore to Switzerland. Yeah. The day before Joseph Muscat was formally charged, he placed blame on Steward for failing to deliver on the requirements of the concession. Muscat claimed that at the time the deal was transferred to Steward, they seemed like an obvious choice, given Boston's reputation for health care. Back to 2017, though, whenever they were, like, purchasing, like, a whole bunch. And I thought, when I heard that they were purchasing us, and they just purchased 8 other hospitals, and they were 8 hospitals in Massachusetts, and then they just purchased in May of 2017, and then they were announcing to us that they were buying us, and we had 16 hospitals. Yeah, 18 hospitals. Oh my goodness, 18 hospitals. And I was like, they're growing really quickly. There's something that's not good to grow quickly. And at first I didn't think it was shady. I just thought it was not a good thing. I was kind of concerned about that as well. But they were suing the Massachusetts Center for Health Information and Analysis because Steward was the only hospital system in the state to repeatedly fail to submit required company-wide financial statements and not having fulfilled the requirement since 2015. So in its suit, Steward said that the financial statements contain sensitive proprietary business information related to long-term debt relationships with investors, retirement plans, and significant transactions that is not otherwise publicly available. Now, that should be a red flag, and I'm not, I'm just a nurse, so I'm not, like, on the business side. I think that if you're for profit, you have to disclose those, but maybe if you're publicly traded. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows the difference. Anyway, they failed to do this, and Steward keeps information contained in the notes of its financial statements confidential because releasing the notes would cause harm to Steward. Yeah, probably to show that they're putting things off international, hiding their money. Steward further stated that their concerns were related to the CHIA, which is the Massachusetts Center for Health Information and Analysis, which is CHIA, past publicization of their financial data, and argued that the agency had no authority to collect the information. In 23, a judge ruled in favor of the state, confirming that CHIA had the authority to demand the information. And Steward did file an appeal, which is still pending into early 24. And now they're filing bankruptcy. And they're probably trying to hide things. Now, that's just my opinion. I have no documentation in this. as far as that. But they're contributing the bankruptcy to the pandemic. And because a lot of hospitals, they were hurt. They had to stop surgeries. They had to stop certain service lines that were like more elective surgeries, I should preface. Like things that weren't required for a patient to come into the hospital that would put them more at risk, than an elective like knee replacement or whatever, that maybe they could hold off a little bit, not get at risk of getting COVID. And also they did have a lot of locations that served lower income areas with Medicare and Medicaid. And so the reimbursement isn't as good as some of the, like populations that are private insured. Private insurance is a lot better. You get paid more through the hospital. And they're saying that 70% of their people that are Medicare and Medicaid. They also complained of what they described as a gap with between the reimbursement rates which public and private insurers pay community hospitals, like I was just saying. But in response to this questions raised regarding the use of tens of millions of dollars in pandemic relief provided to the company by the federal government. So here they're complaining about it, but they got a lot of relief from the federal government. Bloomberg reported in September 2020 that at the time, the amount Steward had received in federal grants and loans stood at $675 million. So let's look at some of the consequences to their actions and why he is getting such backlash. Okay, yes, his hospital system is failing. They're not paying their bills. But why? Why is he getting all the backlash? Well, let's see. Because Dr. De La Torre allegedly tapped into Steward's dwindling resources to fund personal endeavors. What endeavors, do you ask? Well, central to the investigation is a high-profile transaction involving Green Hill School located near Dallas, where Dr. De La Torre's children attended as students. In 2022, the school credited the De La Torre Family Foundation for a $10 million gift toward the construction of the new STEM and Innovation Center. However, Spotlight reports that records indicate the funds did not come from Dr. De La Torre or a family foundation, but rather from Steward. Public tax filings show that the only active tax-exempt foundation in Dr. De La Torre's name, the Texas-based De La Torre Charitable Trust, had $7,000 in cash at the beginning of 2022 and reported no donations since 2021. Documents from Steward's bankruptcy case, first cited by the Wall Street Journal, reveal that Steward Healthcare Systems, LLC, which manages Steward's community hospitals, made $3 million in donations to Green Hill School between May and August of 2023. It's unclear if any contributions were made before May 22, as the form only covers information after that date. Moreover, the construction of the new Science Center at Green Hill School was overseen by CREF, C-R-E-F. It doesn't say what it stands for. A company in which Dr. De La Torre held an ownership stake. CREF was spun out of a small Cape Cod construction, obviously because he's probably from Boston. Actually, I think he did live in Boston. Well, yeah, because he was a surgeon there, a cardiac surgeon, I believe. Company in 2016 and operated by a general contractor who first met Dr. De La Torre during the renovation of the CEO's Cape Cod mansion, according to the Globe. Yep, see, there you go, Cape Cod mansion. The Spotlight team reports that Dr. De La Torre held a 40% ownership stake in CREF, acquired in 21, with funds partly sourced from Steward's international subsidiary. Between May 23 and May 24, Steward paid CREF more than $37 million in management fees, according to Steward's bankruptcy filing. So they can paid this $37 million to a construction company, but can't make their bills. They can't pay their vendors to get supplies for the hospitals that the patients need. And then they file bankruptcy. So scrutiny of Dr. De La Torre has intensified as he has remained unavailable for hearings. That's the other thing. In April, September, I'd have to go back and look at all the hearings that they've had. He refuses to show up to these hearings. And they've even subpoenaed him, and I'll go into that. But in July, a bipartisan group of senators subpoenaed the executive, compelling him to testify before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee at a hearing on September 12th. Again, if you want to see all the closures and all that, it was in Wikipedia. But a response to the 2 hospitals in Ohio that were closed, someone said, this RN says, the closure of Hillside is a tragic result of greed-driven hospital executives backed by private equity who prioritize their yachts and private jets over patient care. So that's one of the scrutinies, that he has this $40 million yacht and another $15 million fishing boat and everything else, but yet his hospitals are failing. And I'll go over some of that shortly here. And this decision leaves our community without crucial rehab services and forces our dedicated team of nurses and health professionals into unemployment due to Steward's unchecked greed. Now, you don't think this is the next episode of American Greed? I think so. And the 2 hospitals in Massachusetts that the governor kept saying that they did not want any of the hospitals in Massachusetts to close ended up closing. Kearney and Neshoba Valley in Massachusetts, which, is distraught to all the people there because they needed to, they need care. Plus, just these 2 hospitals alone laid off 1,200 employees. In 2010, Norwood had to close because of some flooding, and they were supposed to renovate that. But they stopped construction on that because they weren't paying their bills. So that hospital never reopened because, I'm a construction company. I'm not getting paid. I'm halting construction. And that's exactly what they did. And here's another thing that Governor Maura Healey said. This is not over. And she said this in a July 26th statement shared with Becker's Hospital Review. For the remaining hospitals, we know that Steward received several bids to not only maintain but improve 5 of their hospitals in 3 key regions. It is time for Steward and their real estate partners to finally put the communities they serve over their own selfish greed. They need to finalize these deals that are in their best interest and the best interest of patients and workers. And they said this because they kept delaying bids and potential sales because I think it was because they didn't like it. Maybe it wasn't a good enough one. It sounds like they were just being too greedy. So now we're at the Senate subpoenas Dr. De La Torre. And this is the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and voted July 25th to subpoena Dr. De La Torre and investigate the bankrupt for-profit health system. This is the first subpoena that the HELP, which is the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, has issued since 1981. That means this is pretty serious, right? The subpoena orders for him to testify September 12th, hearing examining the bankruptcy and its effects on patient care, which he continues to refuse to show up to these hearings. And it says, previously, Dr. De La Torre was invited by Senator Ed Markey to attend an April 3rd HELP subcommittee field hearing in Boston examining the effects of private equity in hospital management, and he did not attend. And his lawyers are claiming that he doesn't have to because it's a violation of his constitutional rights. What about the patients? What about their rights? What about their care, right? So federal prosecutors are investigating allegations including fraud and violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, two sources told the publication. So this is related to the overseas stuff. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977 was enacted for the purpose of making it unlawful for certain classes of persons and entities to make payments to foreign government officials to assist in obtaining or retaining business. And so that's what they're trying to get him on. But so far, what I've read, he's not been convicted. A deal with the European country of Malta, wherein Stewart was tapped to operate 3 state-owned hospitals, has gone sour, and they actually took back over their hospitals, and so Stewart does not have management over the Malta hospitals anymore. So I have to give a lot of credit to the people who are still working there at these hospitals, because they, the governor of Massachusetts kept saying we're going to keep these hospitals operating and everything else, but how are they going to get employees? The people that are actually staying there that haven't got laid off from a closure is amazing, because listen to this. They have $9 billion in debt. And their goal, she says, is to close their hospitals, obviously. They have closed. But part of this $9 billion in total liabilities, which includes $290 million in unpaid employee wages. If I didn't get paid, I'm sorry. I love my job, and I love making sure patients are safe. But I need a paycheck. I need to pay my bills. I'm going elsewhere. And wages and benefits. Almost $1 billion in unpaid bills to suppliers and medical vendors, $1.2 billion in loans, and $6.6 billion in long-term rent obligations from that MPT, Medical Properties Trust. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, news of the planned hospital sales come after Medical Properties Trust, there we go. One of the world's largest hospital real estate owners and Stewart landlord committed $75 million in debtor and possession financing for Stewart after it filed for bankruptcy. Medical Properties Trust expects the health system to use the funds to continue patient care while it pushes to re-tenant its hospitals to new operators. And my understanding how this was working is that they bought all these hospitals, but then they sold the land and the property to this medical property trust, and then they invested. Some of you finance people probably understand this better than me, but and so that's how they have to keep paying rent now to this company, and how they keep going further in debt. But they were investing in Stewart and giving them loans, and obviously he was not paying his bills with those loans and everything he was given. He was giving millions of dollars to his kid's school and this construction company, and buying yachts and private jets and everything else. So they had to actually, the state of Massachusetts had to actually start up an incident command, or activate the incident command center system in Massachusetts because of these failing hospitals, to try to make sure the people in Massachusetts were safe because of how these hospitals were running. And the command system was led by Greg Meyer, MD, who was based out of Mass General Hospital, which is a good hospital in Massachusetts, a Massachusetts General Physician Organization. And it is designed to safeguard care and services at the Stewart hospitals. So the state had to actually activate an incident command center system because of the failing hospitals. Usually states do that like when hurricanes come or, disasters, but not because hospitals, you can't manage hospitals and you're bankrupting them. In February, the health department deployed monitors to Stewart hospitals across the state to ensure adequate resources are available to deliver safe care and that staff are supported. In March, Stewart announced it was looking to transfer ownership of all 9 of its Massachusetts hospitals. That's because the governor, I don't know if it was after the, I might have my timeline a little bit mixed up, but it might have been after or before the filing bankruptcy, but she stepped in and was like, you are failing and these hospitals cannot close. You have to transfer ownership to the state or somebody else. Like, she was trying to force them to sell their hospitals in Massachusetts, and obviously they have not. And then they had to close down 2 of the hospitals, which is devastating to even patients because they need the care. All right, so Dr. De La Torre, yes, he was previously the CEO of the Cardiovascular Institute at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston and practiced as a cardiac surgeon. So, yeah, he was a cardiac surgeon. Earning the distinction of the hospital's youngest chief of cardiac surgery at the time. And that's why, like, Caritas and all them is like, wow, you are, like, you're doing great, you're ambitious, energetic, and appointed him CEO. Well, obviously, greed got to his head, right? And then Cerberus was required by Massachusetts Attorney General to meet specific requirements, which we already discussed, such as making a $400 million investment in the infrastructures. From funding the health system's operating losses to its infrastructure expenditures, Cerberus met the Attorney General's requirements and moved forward without further oversight. And that's when I feel they're like, hey, no one's watching. You know what happens when the cat is away, the mouse will play, right? It's the same. So in 2020, Stewart received the $675 million in government funding that we talked about, but still saw a net loss of more than $400 million that year. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. In an effort to provide relief to Stewart, Medical Properties Trust loaned $200 million to a joint venture it had formed with Stewart in the summer of 2020, which allowed Stewart to purchase international assets, resulting in a $27 million book value and $173 million cash gain for the health system. But Cerberus began its exit from Stewart in 2020 amid the continued financial losses. Rather than sell its stake, the private equity firm transferred its interest to a group of Stewart physicians led by Dr. De La Torre. The exchange included a note, which was due in 5 years, and ensured Cerberus was paid regular interest payments that could be converted to equity regardless of whether Stewart performed well. Cerberus's 5-year note was purchased by Stewart through the borrowing of $335 million from Medical Property Trust in January of 21, which placed MPT as Stewart's landlord, largest creditor, and its minority owner. So Cerberus fully exited Stewart in May of 21, walking away with around $700 million. Stewart then went on to purchase the 5 Florida hospitals for $1.1 billion from Tenant Healthcare. This was after my time. After which MPT acquired the associated real estate for $900 million and entered a sale leaseback deal with Stewart. So this is all that like buyback stuff to get money, and I don't completely understand it all. So Rosemary Batt, who is a PhD in management and employee professor at Ithaca, New York, based Cornell University, and she's been studying Stewart close since 2012. And she said, it's a house of cards. Yes, other health systems are struggling, but not this badly, because other healthcare systems own their own property. They're not paying inflated rents that keep rising every year. Apart from the $50 million in rent owed by Stewart to Medical Properties Trust, the health system's 9 Massachusetts hospitals have multiple outstanding liens of nearly $4 million in debt to multiple contractors. And that's why I think now, after all this, they're trying to keep private equity firms out of healthcare, which I think it should. I mean, look at everything that's going on, and I'll tell you some of the stories, horror stories that are in here, and maybe a couple of mine when I was there. Maybe, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that. In 2015, then Attorney General Healy was in charge of monitoring the health system's fiscal health and issued a report that stated while Steward-owned hospitals were ensuring important elderly and low-income patient services, its mounting losses raised concern about the for-profit hospital's financial stability. So they're saying, hey, even because of this issue or excuse that you're saying, your losses are really bad and it's not helping. And Ms. Healy had made it clear that Steward won't be bailed out for its financial troubles and must come up with a plan to ensure the protection of patients and jobs, along with keeping stability across Massachusetts' healthcare system. So I think they did have to come up with the plan, and what that is, I don't know. So, of course, Senator Bernie Sanders is involved because he is part of that HELP committee, and he was saying he has decided not to show up because he doesn't want to explain to the American people how horrific his greed has become. Tell me about your yacht. Tell me about your fishing boat. I want to hear your justification for that. Tell that to the community where staff was laid off while you made $250 million. Sanders said that to hold Dr. De La Torre in contempt would require a vote by the Senate of that committee. And what I have read, it looks like they voted to hold him in contempt, or to subpoena him, which he refused to show up because it's in violation of his rights, constitutional rights. And because it also says because the federal court order prohibits him from discussing anything during an ongoing reorganization and settlement effort. Excuses. Sanders also said that they have received no indication that he will change his mind and attend the hearing, which will also include testimony from nurses who worked at 2 hospitals owned by Steward. And these are some of the testimonies. You have a guy becoming fabulously wealthy while bankrupting hospitals and denying low-income and middle-income folks the health care they so desperately need. Oh, Sanders said that. He said that more than a dozen patients have died in Steward hospitals as a result of inadequate staffing and shortages of medical equipment. They're contributing 15 patient deaths, but I bet you there are more. Being on the quality side of healthcare, there's just things that they didn't find. I'm sure there's more deaths. How unsafe I see some of this stuff when I read this. They have horrible processes, and I'm sure there's more than 15 deaths in the 10 years or whatever they're talking about. But where do people go? Where's the nearest emergency room is what they're saying, right? And there is a testimony, I'll have to find it here, from these nurses and how bad it really is. Dr. De La Torre also refused invitations to testify at a Boston field hearing earlier this year by Senator Edward Markey, which is a member of the committee. It says that, this is where he had bought a $40 million yacht while employees at Steward Hospitals complained about lack of basic supplies. And let's see, the state health regulators in Arizona suspended operations at a Steward-owned psychiatric hospital after the air conditioning at the Phoenix facility cut off amid triple-digit temperatures. Can you imagine in Arizona? Like, I'm in Florida and it's hot, and some people haven't had power, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But Arizona, triple digits. In West Monroe, Louisiana, hospital workers described searching the premises for basic medical supplies during procedures. You're doing a procedure and you're having to search the premise. Don't tell me that, okay, maybe 15 patients died, but I'm sure a lot more have been harmed, and that's unacceptable. One patient died at the hospital awaiting transfer to another hospital, resulting in an immediate jeopardy citation from regulators. So an immediate jeopardy is when like CMS or Joint Commission or somebody, a surveyor comes and does their surveys of the hospital, and they find something that's not safe, and they're like, you need to be shut down, or they'll put other measures in place if they can't really shut down the hospital, but they'll lose funding of Medicare and Medicaid, and then they'll put in CMS consultants to make sure that they're working on what the unsafe act is. So this hospital was in immediate jeopardy. After the chain declared bankruptcy, the Massachusetts governor enacted an emergency plan to manage the disposition of its 7 remaining hospitals there, because remember, Kearney and Neshoba was closed down, but they closed Norwood in 2020 because of flooding, which they didn't rebuild. So all these hospitals are shutting down or closing, and then they're having immediate jeopardy in other hospitals, and it's really scary. So at the hearing, Sanders said, "Today we are saying enough is enough. It's time for Dr. De La Torre to get off his yacht and explain to Congress the financial situation which it made him extremely wealthy while the hospitals he managed went bankrupt." And, he has 2 private jets, which my coworker was able to, like one time we were at one of the hospitals, and their flights got canceled, so they all were going to Massachusetts. I didn't live in Massachusetts, I lived in Illinois at the time, so I was going to Illinois. So they all got the private jet and got to be on the private jet, and of course I had to go on a regular one, which I'm fine with. But it's like, at the time when they're like, oh yeah, we'll just bring the private jet, I'm like, okay, I know healthcare systems, okay, it might be smart to have a private jet if you're going to utilize it to save money on all the airfare for us traveling, but it was mainly for those execs, and it's like, I thought that was kind of like odd. I don't think other healthcare systems have private jets. I could be wrong though. So where Sanders was getting this, he cited articles in the American Prospect, the Boston Globe, and Becker's Hospital Review. So if you're interested, you can go to those things as well and find things. The Justice Department launched a criminal investigation into the allegations of fraud and corruption at the company. CBS and other outlets reported, so even CBS. Stewart also has been investigated in the Mediterranean nation of Malta, where the company reached €4 billion deal to manage 3 hospitals. But like I said, they recommended criminal charges, but so far he hasn't been charged, but Joseph Muscat, who was charged with money laundering, corruption, and bribery. So okay, one of the testimonies from the Louisiana hospital on this nurse recalled having to switch tactics in the middle of a procedure. How do you switch tactics in the middle of a procedure? Because the hospital didn't have a $5 tube called a guide wire. In another case, a young man came to the emergency room after a heart attack, but its staffers could not reach an on-call cardiologist because the specialist hadn't been paid. When staff tried to order medication from the pharmacy for the patient, the drug wasn't stocked because the hospital supplier hadn't been paid. The nurse Russell described coffee pots being repossessed and said document shredding companies had quit. Coffee pots, you guys. How do you repossess a coffee pot? Then Stewart wanted to buy more of this, reach out into this other physician group. And so Dr. Charles Fishman, I hope I said that right, thought he had sufficiently vetted Stewart Healthcare after executives approached him about purchasing his Vero Beach, Florida medical practice in early 17. I didn't know about this, and I was there in 17. The internal medicine doctor was nearing retirement age and considering his next steps. He wanted to make sure his 10,000 patients, 2 fellow doctors, a nurse practitioner, and administrative staff were in good hands. So he obviously really cared about his patients. When Fishman met with Steward executives, he said each leader was more charming than the next. Yeah, of course you can be when you're a con artist, you got to be charming, right? He felt comfortable with the idea of a physician-led company acquiring his practice. When IASIS was being bought out, and I heard that a physician was the CEO and was going to lead the facility, I thought it was going to make good changes. I was actually really happy about the merger, even though I knew it could cost my job, because I was a corporate director and they had corporate. So a lot of times you keep the same corporate people, right? If you're going to buy it out, you're going to let go all the other the corporate people. Well, they didn't have my position, so they kept me on, but I was really hoping for good changes. And when I first met him, I thought he was a little charming, but there was just something off about him in my gut, and I guess I was right, but I didn't know what at the time. But I'm kind of oblivious. I stayed in I kind of just do my job. I stayed to myself. I try not to get into drama or gossip, so that could probably be it too. But anyway, so he felt comfortable with the idea of having these physician-led practice. Steward representatives talked to his employees over breakfast and eased their worries. So they were like, oh, yeah, okay. We felt good about it, But weeks after Steward took over, just weeks, you guys, on June 1st, 2018, problems surfaced. Longtime vendors such as lab suppliers complained they had not been paid. The local water and power companies were within 24 hours of shutting off services because of unpaid bills. And, he was saying that he knew these people for 30 years in the community. And now they're probably like, dude, what's going on? I mean, this is kind of his reputation still, right? Fishman's wife, Carol, also worked at the office and fielded complaints from the vendors. And they wanted to get reimbursed for their services. Well, yeah, because they have their own mortgages and bills to pay. They need their money. If they're providing their service, you pay. That's how it works. At a Vero Beach dinner meeting with some Steward executives months after the hospital chain bought the medical practice, Carol asked why the vendors' payments were delinquent. She didn't get answers. Red flag, right? All we heard were stories about fishing boats and hospitals in Malta. Really? You're not going to answer why they're not getting paid and talking about your boat and buying these hospitals in Malta? That's not very good. So of course his wife quit, and Fishman said executives pressured him to refer patients only to other Steward employed physicians, which I don't know how illegal that is. I know in healthcare you have I know as far as if you come in the hospital and you need a home health care or a nursing home or something, you have to give them options. You can't just say, oh, here you go to this hospital. I mean, you can always have it as one of the options, but you have to give the patient the option and the choice where to go. So I don't know about actually referring physicians, but I'm not as knowledgeable in that area. He eventually left the practice in April of 2020 and relocated to Tampa, where he does see patients a few days a week. So at least he cares. So I commend that physician, and he seemed to really care. But effective October 1st, he resigned, and it says mutually agreeable terms. Was it really mutually? Well, I'm sure it was at this point with all the backlash that he's getting from, he keeps going places and doing things, and as a system is going bankrupt. But he will continue to be a tireless advocate for the improvement of reimbursement rates for the underprivileged patient population. Really, if you really cared, he wouldn't have put greed over patients' care. Dr. De La Torre urges continued focus on this mission and believes Stewart's financial challenges put a much-needed spotlight on Massachusetts' ongoing failure to fix its healthcare structure and the inequities in its state system. Really? You're going to blame the state? What about all the other 30 hospitals or whatever and failures? The separation follows a unanimous Senate vote on September 25th to hold Dr. De La Torre in contempt for skipping a health, education, labor, and pensions committee that he was subpoenaed. But where is he? In response, Dr. De La Torre sued the health committee on September 30th in federal court, alleging unconstitutional punishment for invoking his Fifth Amendment right to not testify in an unvarnished and unlawful crusade to deter, punish, and publicly humiliate him. No one can be compelled to testify when they exercise this right under these circumstances, his counsel said, Dr. De La Torre's counsel said, nor does the Constitution permit Congress to punish and intimidate him or any other American for exercising these rights. The Constitution, not the Senate, reigns supreme in this country. Senator Ed Markey said in a September 28 news release, this resignation comes too late for the workers, patients, and communities that Mr. De La Torre harmed and abandoned. And, of course, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey said on that same statement date, September 28th, he brought an unprecedented level of greed and mismanagement to healthcare in Massachusetts, and he could not leave soon enough. Some more consequences. Stewart's Rockledge Regional Medical Center, which I loved that hospital, that's in Florida, was named in a lawsuit from a pest control company regarding a bat infestation at the hospital. The lawsuit alleged that the bat removal took nearly 2 months of labor and resulted in a removal cost of $936,000. The pest control company's lawsuit has demanded Stewart pay it more than $1.6 million for interest, damages, attorney fees, and court costs. So here you have hospitals with bats, and you're not taking care of it. You're not paying your bills. And another lawsuit against the health system was filed by a landscaping company for more than $59,000 in unpaid bills after the company claimed it did not receive services payment from Stewart. And other lawsuits against the health care system include more than $50,000 in unpaid bills from an Orlando, Florida-based construction firm, and another over more than $50,000 lawsuit from a door and glass company for the installation of hospital doors that went unpaid. So there's multiple testimonies of what not paying your bills can do to patients and our communities and closures, and that all you care about is greed. And look at what you're doing amongst our country. You have hospitals all over the country, and you're failing all these people. And the other thing he keeps doing is pushing back the sales of the hospitals to at least get somebody who can manage these hospitals in a decent, and save our patients and put better care and safer processes in place to do this, to manage these hospitals. Even a law firm filed a lawsuit against Stewart March 25th and claimed that the health system owed $605,000 for legal services rendered for more than 6 years, including interest and additional damages. So you're not even going to pay your law firm? Another interesting thing, Stewart made 6 payments at just under $1.6 million this year to London-based Audir International. A commercial intelligence, investigations, and security company. Stewart had previously paid upward of $7 million over a more than 6-year period to the company to conduct surveillance and disinformation operations against both critics and a former Stewart employee. Why would you spend that much money on investigating, right? Dr. De La Torre made a gross salary of $3,766,000 from May 8th to April 11th of 24. So May 8th, 23 to April. But his hospitals are going bankrupt. But you can pay yourself almost $4 million in just about a year. And just before they filed bankruptcy on May 6th, 14 other Stewart executives received at least $1 million in overall compensation just 12 months prior to the health system filing. Really? So, and as news surfaced about Stewart's closing of 2 of its hospitals, Massachusetts hospitals, and conducting layoffs, this is when Dr. De La Torre was faced with backlash for traveling to France to the Olympics, probably in his private jet. I got this, like, it looks like it was like what they talked about in one of the hearings that he wasn't there. This is pbs.org NewsHour show, but the title is Investigation Reveals How Investors Made Millions as Stewart Healthcare System Collapses. And according to an investigation by the Boston Globe, Stewart's Health 30-plus hospitals were some of the worst in the nation. Even they're saying that, like, the hospitals are the worst. Sadly enough, sometimes babies die, babies die, and the practice is to place the baby's remains in a bereavement box and take it to the morgue. Stewart didn't pay the vendor, and there weren't any bereavement boxes. And nurses were forced to put babies' remains in cardboard shipping boxes. Can you imagine, not only did you just lose your child, but now they're putting it in a cardboard shipping box because you can't even, like, pay your vendor to get a box? How sad is that? And they didn't have wires for pacemakers, so then patients who need that procedure would have a delay. If you don't have a biopsy needle, as that was one of the shortages that was documented, that's a vital cancer detecting tests are delayed. Really? So now you can't go get a biopsy? Well, I hope that these patients are going elsewhere to get their biopsy and not waiting and waiting until they can find a needle. It's just another case. This one was hard for them to talk about. Young guy, 31 years old, beloved uncle, beloved nephew, had some mental health problems that normally would be managed with a medication. He didn't always take it because he didn't like how the medication made him feel sometimes. He had a bit of a psychological break. The police did the reasonable thing and brought him to Carney Hospital in Dorchester, Massachusetts, which is a Stewart hospital. He was restrained in the emergency department, chemically and physically restrained. Sometimes when people are kind of agitated, we have to safely try to restrain them. But if they have, if they're unsafe to themselves, we have to place a sitter with them. And that sitter is a one-on-one watching the patient to make sure they don't harm themselves or that they are safe. So he was also having some respiratory issues, and the doctors ordered that he not be left alone, so he had the one-to-one monitoring. Unfortunately, the hospital didn't have the people for the one-to-one monitoring, and he was left alone. So when his heart stopped, there was nobody there to help him. There was nobody there to resuscitate him. Nobody there to raise an alarm. And 19 hours later, he was wheeled to the morgue. And there's tons of these stories, and I'm sure there's more that they don't even know about. And so why are you not speaking to these patients' family while you have $250 million compensation payday, buying yachts, going to France, not talking or explaining yourself as people are dying and mothers have to have their deceased newborns in cardboard boxes. Mitt Romney remarks, he's in Utah. He said, of the operations in Utah, the Utah senator said Steward understaffed healthcare facilities. They didn't pay for the required medical equipment. They failed to meet minimum operating standards. They refused to pay a number of vendors to the tune of about $3.4 million. All these senators and politicians are like appalled by what this person's doing. And I'm sorry, all politicians are a little greedy and corrupt. And so they're saying that this healthcare CEO, that's something to say, right? That's just my opinion about politicians. Sorry. I don't really usually get into politics, but I don't like any politician. Most importantly, they endangered lives. Ellen McInnes, a nurse at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts, in her testimony, said nurses were forced to put babies in cardboard boxes, and the hospital often didn't have basic supplies like Similac, Pedialyte, and diapers. She also recounted incidents where deaths could have been avoided through proper staffing and required resources. So that was part of her testimony on probably like the cardboard boxes or for the deceased is what she was talking about. McInnes also remembered there were 95 patients in the ER and only 11 nurses. That day, she said an elderly man awaiting chemotherapy treatment suddenly died in the ER. Another day, a patient in mental health crisis arrived in the ER, and I think this is the same case that they were talking about. Without enough staff, they couldn't allocate someone to watch him continuously, as is the standard procedure. The patient went into distress and died. So I think that was that other case I was talking about. It says, if he is prosecuted and convicted of criminal contempt, Dr. De La Torre could face a fine of up to $100,000 in jail time. Really? $100,000? That's it? When he sounds like he's siphoning a lot more, like millions and millions of dollars? Another nurse recounted how the beds at the hospital would not be repaired when they were broke. Staff then rented beds to fill in the gap, but Steward stopped paying the rental bed vendor, forcing her and her colleagues to transfer patients to other hospitals because they didn't have the space or the beds for the patients. In the article, The American Prospect, the actual title of this article is Steward Healthcare are Healthcare Terrorists. They're calling Steward Healthcare Terrorists. And because he's not showing up, they're like, where is Dr. De La Torre? Is he in his villa in Madrid? Or on his yacht? Or his other yacht? Where is he? So that is one of the questions. And he asked one of the witnesses, Senator Markey asked what the witnesses would have done with the $800 million dividends that were siphoned out of the hospitals in 2016, or the $40 million De La Torre spent on the larger of his two yachts. And this nurse said, and who is a 26-year veteran of St. Elizabeth Hospital in Brighton, suggested she might start by paying off the elevator mechanic. I work on the 10th floor, and there are supposed to be 6 elevators, and one is working, and even that one only works most of the time. Steward administrators devised a bizarre, if creative, solution, and I have to hand it to these executives at the hospitals because their probably hands are tied. If Steward's not paying and there's not money, they got to come up with these creative solutions. So I don't necessarily blame them for devising this plan, but this is what they said. They gave us these sleds to drag patients who can't walk in an emergency or if there's a fire in the building. I'm 65 years old. Do you think for 1 minute I can haul a patient down a flight of stairs in a sled? This is lunacy. She also stated that her and her colleagues had frequently reached into their own pockets to buy smaller items patients needed, like baby formula, Pedialyte, and even dinner. At one point earlier this year, a representative from Boar's Head reportedly walked into St. Elizabeth's to repossess its remaining inventory of deli meat. McInnes choked back tears recounting how pediatric nurses had pooled funds to buy specialized boxes for presenting the corpses of dead newborns to grieving parents when Steward went on credit hold with the vendor. I mean, that's just... These nurses are amazing that because Steward is greedy, they're coming out of their own pocket to be able to at least present their deceased newborn to the parents. And I get emotional about this, sorry, because my daughter did lose her baby, and I couldn't just imagine if they came in with a cardboard box. That's just, so I commend these nurses. With all these horrible testimonies and everything else that this company has impacted in our hospitals, our healthcare in the United States, and how all these patients are being affected at these hospitals, I hope they finally let someone buy them who can turn these hospitals around and give the care to our patients that we need it. So where is Ralph De La Torre? We need to find him. And they even came up with a flyer, and I'll put it right here. I hope you enjoyed hearing about this, even though it's not the best thing to hear about, and I debated talking about it. Some of my things that I saw while I was there was, like the CFO had to buy toilet paper for the facility. We had to go get the fetal monitoring strips for mothers while they're in labor at another hospital. We had to borrow supplies from other hospitals and stuff like that. So I saw that even before I got let go, and that was before the pandemic. And when I would go, employees would complain about their they can't get the supplies. Stewards not paying their bills, and they were complaining it back then before I got let go, and that was before the pandemic. So yeah. So where are you, Ralph De La Torre? Speak to the public about what's happening. Yes, you have constitutional rights, but we also have the right to have adequate care and safe care for our patients. So where are you? All right. The riddle of the day is, why is the piano so hard to open? Comment down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.